All right. Well, hello, YouTube, and welcome to Startup Hut's first Party Pitchers Pitch event. My name is John Weinberg, and I'll be your host. The episode you're going to watch was streamed live on July 25th, 2020 on Twitch, and I'm coming to you post-event to tell you how Party Pitchers works. Now, each startup that you're going to watch here today is going to get 3 minutes to pitch. After they pitch, there'll be a quick 5-minute Q&A where each panelist will ask some questions and give some feedback. After all 5 startups had their chance to pitch, we'll conclude with a quick roundup where our awesome panelists that I'll introduce in a few moments will give feedback and do a quick review of the startups. Make sure you stick around for Kilo's pitch as we have an exciting collaboration to announce. Now, pretty excited to introduce the 3 amazing people we have on our panel today. First up, Saba Karim, who's the Global Pipeline Manager for Techstars. Michael Hardy, who's the Strategic Design Lead for BCG Digital Ventures. And Don Ho, who's a Senior Venture Partner at Pioneer Fund and Managing Director of QuantStamp, which is a YC Class of 2018 graduate. Before we get started with the pitches, I wanted to extend a huge thank you to all of you for taking the time out of your day to view our event in support of the 5 awesome companies we have pitching. As many of you listening in right now may know, starting a company is a very difficult journey, and considering the circumstances we're presented with in today's COVID world, it's even harder. So everyone listening in right now, I encourage you to subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on your choice of LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at The Startup Hut, and on Twitch at /Startup Hut, where we'll be hosting our next live event. But most importantly, we want you all to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Now let's get right to it. First up, pitching out of New Jersey, we have Sneh Kadakia, founder of The Drop-In.
Thanks so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Sneh Kadakia, and I'm the founder and CEO of The Drop-In. Whether or not you already had the flexibility to work remotely prior to the pandemic, almost everyone on the call today and around the globe has now undergone the world's largest work-from-home experiment. And for the millions of us that live in suburb areas, working under less than ideal conditions at home, we have quickly come to realize the complete lack of work-related spaces and services in our communities. As an entrepreneur and mom living in Princeton, New Jersey, my 3-year-old son has become a staple on most calls, which is both fun and extremely challenging. Flexible workspace is a $26 billion global industry, but the majority of those spaces are located within major suburban cities, and their services cater to a very small group of customers and professional needs. We are positioning The Drop-In to be the first major flexible workspace player in the untapped suburban market. As professionals and students continue to adapt to virtual work and learning environments, we want to be the primary work near home provider. Our vision is to develop an asset-light, franchisable model that mutually benefits the communities that we're in, as well as the local businesses surrounding our centers. We are selecting specific towns based on their demographic makeup, proximity to public transportation hubs, and co-location to colleges and universities. We have honed in on essential services and amenities that enable productivity and collaboration, such as individual phone booths equipped with monitors. And further, we've created simple and on-demand options so customers can pay as they go or pre-purchase discounted packages. Most importantly, our entire guest experience is driven by in-house technology, from search to on-site check-in. With multiple locations across many geographies, our goal is to cultivate a 2-sided marketplace that enables our customers and centers to thrive. And of course, in the light of the ongoing pandemic, we have the strategic advantage of designing our spaces with the highest health and safety standards. Our business model and space layouts are built to accommodate lower occupancy rates and social distancing measures. Joining me in this venture is Scott Sussman. With our combined backgrounds across technology and operations within people-centric industries, we are able to tackle every aspect of this business together. Further, we are fortunate to have numerous advisors and rich networks to bring our concept to market quickly and thoughtfully. Today, we have narrowed down the initial locations for our first center, one within a residential community and the other within an opportunity zone. We have 3 asks for today. 1, we are raising capital to cover build-out costs and operating expenses for our first 2 locations. 2, we continue to seek out connections to guide our decision-making and find avenues for scalability. And 3, we are ready to speak with companies, colleges, and service providers to secure partnerships and networking opportunities. So thank you for your time today, and I look forward to your thoughts and questions.
All right. Awesome. Great job, Sneh. That was an awesome pitch, and love your background. So many flags. It's amazing. All right, cool. So let's get started with the Q&A. Saba, I will let you go first.
Awesome. Hey, great pitch there, Sneh. I think just as a verifying question, I think I missed the understanding of how this differentiates from existing co-working spaces. And if it's not a co-working space, then something didn't land. So if you can just reiterate the main point there, I think that's what I'm trying to gather.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, we are a co-working space. We're considering ourselves a drop-in workspace. And so we have hot desks, phone booths, meeting rooms, as well as day pass desks. The main differentiator for us is the target market. So versus focusing on the urban cities, we're really focused on the suburban markets that completely lack these types of spaces and services today.
Got it. Okay. All right. Let me think on that a little bit more.
All right.
Yeah, I had a quick question around sort of go-to-market. Certainly, I think that suburban markets are untapped opportunities. Do you have any insight on the profile of employee or worker that would be using these services?
Yes, absolutely. So we looked at 2 things. One, the way that we've really refined our search by city is to look at the demographics. So we're looking at household income, industries and jobs, the number of folks living there, so density itself, as well as the types of population. So commuter towns are really big for us, near transportation hubs, the people that were typically traveling to either New York or Philadelphia in our case, and are likely now looking for some options that are between work from home, work near home, and going into the office. We're also very specifically looking at towns that are located next to colleges and universities, as we believe, especially in today's rapidly changing economic and education industry, that's also a big target audience for us. So that would be students.
Okay, so mainly students and other folks who might would have rather worked at offices, but now are just commuting maybe a bit closer, maybe in their own town.
Exactly. And so that's a big key population for us, which is also why our services are very flexible. So versus the short-term subleases and month-by-month opportunities, we're really looking at daily and hourly options that give folks a variety of different ways to engage in our services depending on what their needs are.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, hey Sneh, great pitch and really compelling idea. Just a couple of questions around both community and then also the supply of spaces that are going to be made available to people in the suburbs or in suburban communities. Tell me a little bit about the supply of these spaces. Where are you pulling this from?
Absolutely. So the most important thing is that we've thoughtfully positioned ourselves from a zoning perspective, not as an office, but as a professional services and commercial business. And that's really key because that opens us up to being able to have these centers within residential communities, within retail and commercial mixed businesses, and really in downtown areas. So we want to be extremely thoughtful about not only where we're located, how we're zoned, which enables us to be really creative in the types of services that we provide, but it also puts us in a direct ecosystem with other restaurateurs, realtors, professional services to create a larger ecosystem. So high traffic areas are very important for us as we are operating as a retail operations business in many cases.
Okay. Thank you for that. And just to follow up on the community portion of things, would users of drop-in actually have access to the exact same space day over day, or is it mainly just a hot desking model?
So we don't have dedicated assigned desks at this point in our model. And really what we're focused on, to your point, is to give people a variety of different options. So one day you might need a day pass and just to heads down work for 8 hours a day. And then the other day you might need a meeting room to meet with a customer for a couple of hours, or you're looking for a phone booth to take virtual meetings like this one. And so we're really providing a lot of flexibility to our guests to engage in different aspects of our services. But the way we're monetizing that is either a pay-per-go model, so you pay as you utilize the services, but most importantly, in order to secure reoccurring revenue as well as just revenue ahead of time, we'll be bulk packaging a variety of different services and packages for individuals as a B2B or B2C strategy. But for us, the longer term vision here is a B2B2C strategy. So really targeting on companies, corporations, colleges, and local businesses as a way to be an extension of their current office spaces, or to give people the flexibility to use this as a kind of work from home benefit, which we're rapidly seeing right now in the market and want to take advantage of.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. And, we have a couple questions here in the Twitch chat. So I'm going to go ahead and fire one of them off. So from Eric Bullen, how do you see the need for these co-working spaces changing with the current and post-COVID-19 world? And what, if anything, has changed about your plans, business model, et cetera?
That's a wonderful question. And I think, we have the benefit of actually designing our physical spaces and our layouts all the way to our HVAC systems, very thoughtfully keeping in mind what's happening in the pandemic right now. The way that we've built our model is we're actually targeting spaces that are between 3,500 and 5,000 square feet. We don't want to maximize our occupancy like some of the WeWork experiences, but really thinking about lowest occupancy possible that still allows us to be profitable at a 60+ profit margin. We want to social distance folks that are in the space. And we're also really looking forward to creating spaces that we can contain and clean. So the meeting rooms and the phone booths are a really important aspect of our way to keep people contained and safe, as well as having outdoor space to eat. We are going to be following all of the federal and state guidelines for masks and hand cleaning and sanitizing. That's also another really important aspect of this. And because of the technology overlay, especially early on, we'll be encouraging people to book versus drop in. That way we can control capacity at all times, space out meeting booth and phone booth usage, and continue to clean and keep our spaces hygienic. So that's a really big aspect of our layout, our business model, and the way that our technology plays into managing all of this for us.
Awesome. Okay, great. And are there any follow-ups or anything else from panelists? Go ahead.
So quick question. So have you figured out your ICP, ideal customer profile, and have you had any existing validation? Tell me a little bit about both.
Sure. So versus looking at very specific personas, we've actually widened the way that we're thinking about persona to use cases, as use cases tend to be more universal. So the use case of needing a phone booth to take a virtual call or to join a virtual class, the use case of needing to meet a customer or client on site for a meeting, the use case of needing a day to just be productive and needing Wi-Fi, an outlet, and a dedicated seat. So we're really focused actually on those use cases, plus I believe to one of the earlier questions, looking at the towns and the cities and the demographic and industrial makeup. So that way we're targeting a certain area that we know will likely be able to use our services, as well as thinking about use cases versus particular personas or profiles, as that has a more universal language. And that's something that we're pulling from Spacious's playbook. And I believe there's a second part to your question.
Yeah, validation. Who have you spoken to so far, and how many that have said, yes, I want you to build what you're building?
Absolutely. So actually, prior to the drop-in, I had started another co-working technology company called Locus. We were 100% technology, and we were actually looking to bring co-working to hotels in New York City, and had timed our launch with the end of March. And then we all know how that plays out in New York City. So we had over a year of customer validation, pricing studies, conversations with actual customers, professionals, companies, to really figure out exactly what they were looking for in these flexible, non-committal workspaces that were transitional and really meant for the uses that I had described. And so based on over that year's worth of wealth and knowledge, plus the conversations that we're having right now with companies and corporations. So my background is in HR, so much of my conversations are happening with both startups as well as larger companies to think through their now new work from home policies. And we're using a lot of that, especially given what's happening in New York and Philadelphia, to go backwards and say, okay, these are likely the populations which will be working near from home, at home, majority of the time, so 20 to 100% of the time based on job. And so we're backing up into that based on our conversations with companies as well as individuals. So one of the things that we are just pulling together on our launching is going to be a validation survey to also go back out there. And more than anything, services are important, pricing is important, but we want to get people's attitudes around their want and their need to work in a space like this, just given the current pandemic, and how we can make them feel comfortable and safe as they're engaging with us in our spaces.
Okay.
Awesome.
Does that answer your question?
Michael, another question. It seemed like, so we're going to go ahead and go to the next startup company. If you have any other questions though, or feedback, we'll have that time at the end for you to be able to do that. And then of course, would love for you to have any follow-ups with Sneh after this as well. Awesome. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Sneh.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
All right, next up, pitching out of Atlanta, we have Anders Lilovic, founder of Focal Point.
And I'm here to talk to you today about my solution. I developed Focal Point as a company when I realized, after 25 years as a procurement executive, that there were no tools for procurement professionals to do strategic planning, map projects to meet those strategic plans, and to facilitate the projects after the fact, to track benefits and to ensure that plans are being met. Hence, I brought Focal Point Procurement to be. The problem is, like I said, the procurement department uses Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoints, and email to create strategies, and it's an outdated manual process. And as you can see from the slide, they're completely on an island. And if you think about all the different things that have to come together to create a complete strategy with stakeholder buy-in, it's a big undertaking and it requires a lot of work. And if you think about, what you need to figure out is the spend, how much money is on contract, who the stakeholders are, who the vendors are. And if you don't already have all that stuff together, it becomes very, very challenging to create a strategy that's coherent. And very often, procurement professionals have to do this after the fact as they are getting contracts ready. And oftentimes, they have to start over again, which requires a lot of rework, and it becomes a time-consuming process. It's frustrating for both stakeholders and vendors. Focal Point facilitates all this through AI powering best-in-class processes. But the first thing we do is consolidate all the data. We aggregate it in and pivot it on an axis we call category management, or categories. A category can be anything from management consulting to IT hardware, IT software, contract manufacturing, anything like that. And we take each of these categories through a process where we categorize the risk and importance of that category to organizations. Then we figure out what the relative supply market positioning is. So how much power does the supplier have versus the buyer? Based on those things, we develop recommendations using the AI engines and let the organizations design and create strategies that meet their needs rather than generic market needs. After that, we map the projects that are needed to be executed in order to fulfill that strategy. And afterwards, we track the progress towards achieving those strategies by updating the data and continuing to renew recommendations as the data changes over time. We have made quite a bit of traction. We started with market validation and creating a prototype after we filed for the patent. We have a provisional patent currently, and we're filing for a complete patent later on. Using the prototype, we were able to secure our first letter of intent client, and we are very close to getting a second as we are rolling out the pilot sometime in October. We're in full development at the moment, and we have great traction, and we're making good headway. In addition, we have been accepted to the Founder Institute Accelerator starting in October, so I think that's a very good fit for us as we are rolling out the product as we're getting into the accelerator program. We have a fantastic team. Combined, myself and Edward Chick, our COO, has over 50 years of experience in procurement. Myself as a practitioner and him as a leading sales organization in the vendor space. He has been managing large vendor organizations in the procurement space. We also have fantastic advisors and IT support people to help us along the journey. We are very well positioned to bring this forward. What we're asking for today is obviously we're raising some capital, so we want your consideration for that. We also seek connections with industry to help us guide us on the journey. And last but not least, if there are any clients out there who this product could fit in, we would be very helpful. This helps organizations save money, reduce risk, and increase productivity. And with that, I'll be happy to take your questions.
Question time. Don, we can start with you this time. Switch it up a little bit.
Thanks, Anders. That was a great pitch. I'm really curious to get a better understanding of the software and the interface itself. Is this something that aims to be self-serve, and if not, what does an integration look like?
So it's a little bit of both. So the first thing we do is we integrate with the existing infrastructure that's there, and we bring it together, like I said, and pivot it on this axis called categories. At the beginning, it's self-service, meaning that the organizations will go in and select the category they want to manage and the attributes of that category. So which vendors are in that space today in the organization? Who are the stakeholders? What are the contracts? They kind of help us along the way. Then we guide them through a process where they answer a set of questionnaires that have been predetermined as part of the development setup process. And then we deliver those recommendations based on AI and what they have told us from before. So we have a learning algorithm that kind of says, if these conditions are met, then this is the right strategy, given what your goals are. So if your goals are to reduce risk, it'll be very different than if you're trying to save money. The integrations themselves will be done through SFTP. It's probably the most appropriate. We don't need real-time transactional capabilities. So probably we need to drop in terms of a daily SFTP load from the source systems that are sitting either behind a firewall or as a SaaS provider within the clients today, and we drop it into our service. We have not considered yet integration into the systems from our system, but obviously that's the next step.
Got it. And clearly I see this as a network effect, once you get more data, but how do you overcome the cold start problem? Are you just using initial data first? And how confident are you in some of these algorithms?
Well, I'm spending my life going through the data that we have from our two pilot clients and writing algos right now based on what we're seeing. And also some of these things are fairly generic, right? So if you have a supply problem where you need to have more than one provider, obviously, some of these are very sort of binary in terms of the recommendations, and some of them are a bit more finessed. And those are the things we have to really double down on. And the cold start problem is a great way of putting it. I've never heard that before, but you described it perfectly.
Great, thanks.
Nice. Michael.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this. This is a really compelling idea. I think you're operating in a pretty interesting space. Just had one question about the categories that you said your technology actually supports or actually is looking to. Is there one category that performs better or works better with what you developed over another? And if so, what are they?
So I will say that, if in procurement, you kind of break things into indirect or direct, right? The direct is going towards cost of goods sold. These are things that manufacturing companies have figured out how to buy again and again as part of a day-to-day operations. Our sweet spot is going to be on the other stuff, indirect spend. And within that category, within that large bucket of spend, there's obviously spend that is larger and more unmanageable today, IT, consulting, things that are large spends, few transactions, and a lot of opinions and those kinds of things. Those are the things that lend themselves better, because what we want to do is try to get opinions and feelings out of making a purchasing decision and being more data driven, right? That's something procurement professionals struggle with every day. They know what the right thing to do is, but actually getting the backup with data to support it becomes kind of challenging.
Yeah, makes sense. Just one more question as well. I can see your platform really benefiting by having a lot more people on it, like was mentioned in a previous question. Is there the ability to say, hey, I don't want my company's data to actually be a part of your algorithm. I would rather it be private or kept separate from some of the other users?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think what we're going to do is build, like you said, crowdsource data and crowdsource algorithms. And obviously, we're not going to let anyone else see anyone else's data. And I think the network effect is something that everybody benefits from, albeit if somebody says we want to opt out, I mean, that's something that becomes a discussion at that point in time. And I think, if the case is compelling enough, we will let that happen. But I think you have to be on a case-by-case basis, right?
Okay. Thank you.
So two different parts of feedback. First of all, I think some of the questions are answered, which is good. I think you lost me at the start, Anders. I think I was a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of maybe jargon that might be commonly known to you. And I'm like, I'm not sure. So I don't know what it is. Maybe the other two didn't feel that, or the audience didn't, and that's okay. I hear lots of pitches, so I'm like, oh man, what is he saying? Came in a little bit stronger towards, the middle and the end. And so I guess, a question for you is, what's the biggest risk? What do you, what's keeping you up at night to go, this is why this won't work? Talk to me a little bit about that.
The biggest challenge that we run up against is really procurement individuals are extremely risk averse. And they are very difficult to sell to, and they're very difficult, especially when they want to give you terabytes worth of data that we can mine for decision-making activities, right? So I think that's the biggest hurdle to overcome. We're dealing with companies that I've certainly talked to that are name brands, large in size. They see the merit. This is great. We kind of get it. Even just getting our data where we can say, what are the contracts in management consulting? That's something that they can't really do today without going through a lot of actual manual work. So they get the value right away. But then I say, fantastic, give me all your data so I can help you with that. They go, oh, wait a minute, we need to have a fully operational environment that we can penetration test, we can get things up and running, and we can actually, poke at it. And I think getting some traction will overcome that. But it's what keeps me awake at night is that initial traction and push.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Great. Okay. Any follow-ups or any other questions to that? And I'll give some time for the crowd or the audience to ask some questions on the chat. It looks like we have one comment. I agree with Saba. Procurement is a big, complex area. At the beginning, I would have loved to see an explanation and set the stage and brought me to your world a little more.
Yeah.
Feedback.
And I'll just backing off Rochester play, adding in a bit of a story and going, hey, this is who we're for, and here's a problem we solve in the simplest form, and it might make it easier for dummies like me to go, okay, I totally get who it is for and why. And so maybe, otherwise, great.
Thank you, Saba. That's great feedback.
Okay. Awesome.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Great job.
I'll drop off.
Next up, we have pitching out of Mexico, Renato Carrega, founder of Tegger. Renato, your time starts now.
My name is Renato Carrega. I am the CEO and founder of Tegger, and I'd like to talk to you today about an important problem in digital advertising. Today, 77% of digital ad spend goes towards search and social media sites, whereas users only spend around 36% of their time on those sites. The reason for this is that search and social media have much more accurate data to target advertising and content correctly. That makes a site such as Facebook have 2.6 times a better click-through rate. That means the conversion of impressions to clicks than the average ad on the Google Display Network. These ads also convert clicks to dollars almost 10.3 times better, making them simply a more compelling case to invest in. Tegger gives content sites software and information to better know and monetize their audience by sharing with them intelligence on who their audience is and tools to engage this audience with content catered for their interests. It works in the following way. A user signs up to Tegger without needing to download any software and on the partner site and starts providing information as they browse on the content site, getting rewards for doing so. They can also fill out surveys on themselves to get additional points that they can convert for prizes. Sites and advertisers get precise data and software to know who the audience is so that they can better target content and advertising to these specific audiences. And finally, brands can place their products on our marketplace to get new users as affiliates in exchange for a fee. We currently are present on 4 content sites, including Latin America's leading native digital content site, and are in the process of getting on 3 more. We have more than 18,500 users who have already traded in their points for rewards over 40,000 times. We've also seen that our users browse more deeply and more recurringly than non-Tegger users, which is valuable to sites in and of itself. We have a fantastic team to get this to the next level. I have experience in the blockchain space in aligning incentives for different stakeholders via token models, having founded Mexico's first cryptocurrency investment fund. And our CTO has founded a digital product in Colombia. We're also backed by a group of talented developers and data scientists and have strategically placed advisors in the digital media and digital product landscapes. We're currently raising a pre-seed round and would love if you can join us in creating a fair data revolution. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Saba, guys, what do you think so far? While we
Yeah, we're going to let Michael kick off this one. What are your thoughts, Michael? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, wonderful pitch. Really like the visual nature of it. It really did help certain things come to life as far as like how you're setting up your ecosystem and how the solution practically
Actually,
works.
Sorry, we're not seeing the picture in here, by the way.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah?
He's going to be on in a quick
Oh, just in a minute?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you guys have some quick feedback or review of what you think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I just have a question about the exchanging points boards on different sites or with different partners. Like, I'm just kind of curious about what you're hearing from your users about redemption, if there are any frictions or any challenges that they're facing. Is there a product that they want that they can't redeem it for? Just want to get a little bit more signal on that.
Gotcha. Don, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd like to better understand the incentives here. Certainly it seems like there is some value for me to share my browsing history and my conversions, but I'm just curious about what that hurdle is to get real value, and maybe perhaps what is that currency conversion? Where it's like, is this a month's worth of stuff to get one gift card, or is that payback a bit quicker?
Awesome.
Hi everyone. I'm sorry, I'm in here now. Excuse me for the delay there. I heard both questions and thank you for the feedback. So addressing the first question of how we get the rewards for the marketplace, what we're currently doing is working with brands that are targeting new users, and we're basically transferring the customer acquisition cost directly to the end user. So we're getting these rewards at no cost for Tegger, and we're giving the user the customer acquisition cost as a reward. So that's to answer the first question. And the second, in terms of how quickly you can get the rewards, it's relatively quick. We've priced them to kind of match our points to a dollar value, right, in the consumers or in the users' minds. However, you can get your first reward by browsing, say, 30 minutes. You could have a $5 gift certificate to a new product such as Uber Eats.
Great, thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I had a follow-up actually. Do you imagine this replacing traditional acquisition models, or is this something that works complementary over the long term?
If you mean for the rewards, I think it could be complementary. It's specific because our users kind of have to work for your reward, right? So it gives you users who have a very clear intent of trying out that product or service, or of acquiring it, which I think is valuable from a marketing perspective. However, if you want a super large mass appeal, right, it's not that quick to get new affiliates. It's more interesting, though, in my opinion, as a replacement for third-party cookies. I don't know if you guys are aware, but third-party cookies will be removed by Chrome in 2022 and have already been removed by Safari and Firefox. So in how we target advertising and content outside of social media, we'd like to be positioned as a key solution that can replace the cookie there.
Great, thank you.
So hey, Renato, great pitch. Couple of questions. First of all, any company that pegs themselves to other companies, I get worried about, because if they change the rules and what they do, like the Chrome example is perfect. That if I did something only with Chrome, then they can ruin the long-term scalability of my business. How are you thinking about that, real quick? Just how do you go? We can be a standalone tool regardless of the platform.
Right. So that's a great question. When we originally created Tegger, I had envisaged it as an add-on on Chrome, right? But I thought of the point that you're making specifically, and also wanting a mass appeal where you don't need to download software. So right now it exists as a script that is injected into partner sites HTML. And what happens there is that the script basically calls our software, right? So we can change it at the same time for all sites. Obviously, the limitation there is getting more partner sites on board. And the possible solution would be to create an add-on. However, you do add that little bit of friction in two things. One, users need to download software. And the second is we've kind of flipped the customer acquisition problem for end users, right? Because we're getting basically a free space on these sites that helps users know our product. So that would certainly make it a little more difficult in those terms. But then the challenge would be getting end users and not sites. So I guess it depends where you want your challenge.
Yeah, got it. Cool. Follow-up question. You don't have to answer it, but feedback at the same time. When I read traction like 18,000, I'm like, that's awesome. But I also kind of call like, okay, but tell me really like the daily active, weekly active, or the monthly active users. You don't have to share them right now with everyone here, but just know that it can sound really good, but if you don't share the other stuff of how active they actually are, it can actually make it seem worse. Because I'm like super curious to go, out of how many people registered actually used it.
Right.
Yeah. I'd be seeing that people are using this every day or every week as a way to justify the traction.
Of course, that's a great question. We do have in weekly active users we have about, if I'm not mistaken, 380 weekly active users, so not a huge amount, to be honest, but growing a little bit, and it's our main focus right now is to push that number higher.
Yeah. As a story, I'd love to hear that. Instead of going, hey, we got 18,000 people sign up, only 300 people using it actively, we need to figure out what the expectations were different to what's actually happening. We're going to work that out. Here's why we need funding or whatever to help us figure this out and stretch it out. So that honest story, at least for me and at Techstars, we love to hear that part of it, which is here's what we don't know. Not like you're smart and your team's awesome, but what are the things that you don't know that you're trying to figure out? So
definitely.
Nice. Okay. We have one question here in the crowd that I'm going to shoot your way, Renato, when you're ready. But softball question. Is anyone else giving rewards to users in exchange for information?
Yes, that's a great question. And there's a lot of companies that are doing this from different perspectives. To me, the most interesting is the Brave browser. This is a browser like Chrome or Safari, where as you browse, you're getting points in exchange for seeing ads. But these points don't go directly to you, but rather to the publishers that you most frequent. There's other companies though, such as Keely is one. There's one called Big Token, and several different companies that pay you to complete certain tasks or to share information with them via surveys, email campaigns, etc. So there are. What there are not, though, however, is a company that will, or rather, Tegger is the only company that will give you rewards both for browsing and filling out surveys without requiring you to download software.
Next up, pitching out of Los Angeles, we have Amanda Bender, founder of Kilo.
Tell you a little bit more about Kilo today and why I'm doing this. So let's start there.
No audio.
I was a therapist and worked in neuroscience before making the jump into tech 5 years ago. For the majority of my life, my closest circle of friends have been men. And at the intersection of this facet of my personal life and my professional experience led to the insight that Kilo was born from. Men, unlike women, are not socialized to monitor and track qualitative data. The mission of Kilo is to help men become more insightful and self-aware in order to improve happiness and health. In 2018, men died by suicide 3.5 times more often than women. During the time of COVID-19, mental health has declined further. The problem is men are not supported in tracking and learning from qualitative data. Society has pressured men to track quantitative metrics like hours slept, steps taken, pounds lifted, tasks completed. In contrast, women are also socialized to track qualitative metrics like the quality of sleep, energy, libido, mood, relationship, for example. And this is introduced to the tracking of menstrual cycles. Men too can improve their happiness and health by becoming more insightful about their qualitative state. But how do they do that? They use Kilo. Kilo is an app for men to track qualitative metrics on a daily basis. In turn for their diligence, Kilo will provide actionable data visualizations and narrative insights. In 2019, we did 2 pilots to understand product market fit. We ran it manually via SMS. All participants reported value in participating, and many suggested the experience led to profound personal insights and positive lifestyle changes. The team is made up of our product designer, myself, and our technical advisor, Xander Oxman. Kilo is currently in the process of raising a pre-seed round. Don't miss out on moving the needle on men's emotional fitness. You can email me, bender@kilo.app, to support Kilo. We're building better humans. So if you want to sign up, you can request access to Kilo at www.kilo.app. And lastly, Kilo is working with Startup Hut on an Entrepreneurs Wellness Hour podcast, currently called A Kilo of Wellness, coming in August. So mahalo, Startup Hut. Love to take your questions. I'll pop over into that room, and thank you everyone for your time.
Awesome. That was a great job, Bender. Nice. So she is on her way into this room now. Any quick feedback while we wait for Amanda to come into this room?
Yeah, overall feedback, just for anyone pitching, like I wanted to hear the punchline a lot sooner. Like the story is so important, and if you don't have a story, it's harder to follow. With a story, it makes it better, but I want to hear exactly what the company does a little bit sooner so I can sort of put it all together. It can sometimes make it a little bit more difficult. And so, Amanda, question for you. You said you've spoken to 10 men, or 10 men have done the clinical test or whatever. What number do you think you need to do before you can get like some significance around actually what is happening, and you know, maybe getting closer towards validating this assumption you're making on this?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So we actually had 15 men. We had 5 in the first pilot and 10 in the second pilot. Both were 30 days. And so now we're ready to build the alpha, because we believe that the data input screen, the data visualization screen, and the insight screen will be very valuable to our alpha users.
Okay. So I think just to reiterate the question, do you think there's a number there of maybe talking another 30, 50, 100?
Sorry,
I feel like, you know, I don't know if I chose 10 of my random friends, it's not going to be significant enough to be like, they're all so different. And so what number do you think it is that you need to get to be able to go, we've kind of proven it out for now to target 10 million people or maybe 100,000 people?
Yeah, I would say 100 is the number we're shooting for our alpha. That way we can get different age ranges. So in the pilot, it was 25 to 45 with different ethnic groups. But the pilots were all done in Los Angeles. So we want to get pilot users in different parts of the country, as well as on the end of like 18 to 25, as well as 45 to 60.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd probably say at least 100. It could go up to a few hundred too, just what you're based on. And last point of feedback, and I'll hand over to the others. I don't know, something about me wanted to just see men also on the team, looking at this solution and kind of like focusing on who's actually, you know, working with you closely on it. Something about it made me go, oh, hold on, is this missing spot? And I don't think it is. Like I can say that because we had a dating app a couple of years ago, and we didn't have any women on the team, and every one of our investors was like, okay, you 6 men can't decide what the app looks like without getting a female perspective on it. So just some feedback.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in here. Super compelling concept you have going on here, and it's more than a concept. You actually have it out there working in the real world, which is fantastic. I do have a question on just the makeup and the breakdown of like your user group or your testing group. The first thought that I had was just like, this is great, qualitative natures in order to kind of like talk about men's health. That's fantastic. It made me think about some of the more intersectional qualities, like things about race or class or gender identity. I would imagine if I'm using this, my experience as a Black man would be very different than somebody else from a different background. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are there, how you're planning on controlling for it, and what are you hearing anecdotally or practically on that front from different groups of people?
Yeah, good question. So the markers that we are using in Kilo are markers that come from qualitative data from menstrual apps and some research that we've done. So I believe the data there is blind to any sort of specific ethnic group or age. But I also come from a diversity inclusion background. So that's something that we're paying attention to. We haven't asked that question specifically about onboarding. When we did some user testing for the current prototype, we tried to get users who were of different ethnic backgrounds as well as socioeconomic status.
Awesome. I appreciate that. The other piece, just a point of feedback in the presentation, just kind of like noticing this through the pitches that we've seen so far. I want to see the UI. I want to see the experience. I want to know what people are interacting with. So any opportunity that you can find to actually show interactivity, that motion does help, not only just emotionally in the pitch, but for people like me who kind of have that background, that context, I want to know what's moving around on screen just so I can make a good take on what the value of this, what this app actually is. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll send you the proto.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, so my question kind of revolves around the business model, and I'll kind of unbundle why. I'm a bit more curious about that as well.
Yeah, are you just curious about the business model? Yes, so it'd be a B2C subscription model. So we'd have a freemium version because we don't want to block access for any men to use Kilo, and it will be ad supported. And then the premium model, or we call Kilo Plus, will be subscription based and will provide actually the personalized insights. During the pilot, we tried doing audio insights personalized to the user according to his data with recommendations. And then there would potentially be a group feature for men to create a group to support one another and encourage each other when markers are low or there are correlations or positive trends going up.
Great. And so I asked about that because what I'm really curious about is in your pilot you've run, how accurate is this self-reported data, right? One thing I'm really curious about is like, do men actually know how to emote properly? And does that actually represent what they're actually feeling inside? And I think, for something that's a free app, I feel like there's not enough skin in the game to really perhaps share that. And so I'm curious, like, based on that pilot, did you see the accuracy and, did it really resonate well with the recommendation for it resonate well?
Yes, so what we do is every day when a guy comes into the app and is asked, like, what is the quality of your sleep, libido, mood, etc., we've given a quantitative scale. So it's 0 to 5. So 0 is you don't want to track that marker for the day. 1 is the worst quality and 5 is the best quality. So during onboarding, we are very clear, and we've done user testing with this, about the purpose of the markers and how to properly give them a score.
Got it. And so just to be clear, you're using quantitative markers to give qualitative recommendations.
We're using qualitative markers, which we give a quantitative score in order to give insights and data visualizations.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
I might have missed something really obvious, but where does the name come from? Kilo?
Kilo, it's a measurement. Really simple. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I wonder if it, again, one data point, like, I wonder if all of it just sounds very data analysis, high metrics, qualitative, quantitative, like very too, like, I don't know, mathematical, as opposed to like a human, like, it doesn't have to be a boy or girl's name, but someone that helped me get to my goals. And so maybe there needs to be a persona behind it. Like Alfred, that does, I think it's a butler company, right? Or Alexa, obviously, with Amazon. So I wonder if that may be missing, because I'm like, man, this just sounds too analytical for me. But the result at the start of it, I'm like, this is really cool. Like, I could use it, but then I'm like, oh, am I that data driven? And what's that? Quantified self, right? So yeah, just some thoughts.
No, it's a really good point. And we've thought about anthropomorphizing the app. And in the onboarding, it says, hi, I'm Kilo. So Kilo is the persona that's interacting with the user. And there's names like, hi, Saba, it's Kilo. It's time to do your check-in. How are you doing today? Awesome. So we know how important it is to do that.
Yeah, amazing. Great to hear. Yeah. Then I back up what Michael said, which is show me that experience. And it's so hard in the 2-minute pitch. So good job. And you definitely got a bunch of people excited about checking it out. So.
But I'm hearing you want to see more, which warms my heart.
Just one brief question. With the qualified self, I thought that was interesting. As you started in on the pitch, I was just thinking of like the old school, like Nicholas Felton, like quantified self is like annual reports that he wrote for years and years. Are we trying to completely do away with the quantified self, or just find something that like complements it? Just wondering, as far as like a first impression, kind of go to market or a marketing reaction for the users.
The latter. So we are trying to add something into the pool of analytics that men are looking at, but something that is a friend and serves as a foundation to really shifting men's mental health, because we have to do something.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Yeah.
Nice. Well, we have a few more from the crowd. However, we are running short on time. So what we're going to do is probably have those questions saved for you another time, and we can send those answers to whoever has asked. But Bender, I know you like going by Bender instead of Amanda. Great job. And awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
See you, Amanda. Bender. Okay. Well, it looks like we're having some audio issues right now. Well, anyway, I guess while we get Wayne set up, Don, Michael, Saba, I guess since we were going to do this at the end of the event, maybe we can get some of it in now. What do you think about some of the companies so far? Any advice you'd want to give any of them?
Yeah, I can start first. I think all of these pitches have been great, but similar to Saba's comment here, one thing that I typically speak with entrepreneurs about is at the onset, tell us what you're building, and it can be as simple as saying, "We are Drop-In, and we build software that does X, Y, or Z," right? Because again, to that narrative, if I don't know what you're building, it's just really hard for me to fully understand where to attach the pain. And one example of that could be with Focal Point, where I thought it was a great idea. I think procurement is a huge category, low NPS business that requires a lot of things. But what I don't know is the value chain of procurement, and specifically like how painful it is, and at what point would I use something like Focal Point. And so I think just simply saying it in the onset is going to be really helpful. But I do think that in a 2-minute pitch, it is somewhat difficult. But I think that's what you really want to think about when you're pitching in 2 minutes is like, think about your vertebrae. So for example, when QuantStamp, my company, went through YC, we had like 45 seconds to pitch at demo day, right? And it was with 150 other startups back to back to back. And so there's a very clear formula where you just think about your 3 to 4 points that you just stick to the vertebrae that you want to get through. And, the way I usually say is like, you want to punch people in the mouth with this data, right? And to let it stick. Because frankly, even with, doing 5 pitches, it's very hard to remember everything. And you just want the audience, your VCs, whoever, to just remember at least these 2 or 3 points. So, everything's great, but I do think that's one area where I would hone in on a little bit more.
Don, that must have been hard. Yeah, never done that. It sounds similar to something I've learned, which is sometimes you just need to speak in tweets, like sound bites, so people can take it away and just reiterate it in a different audience or different place. Sorry. One thing I'll comment on is you could have the best pitch in the world. And it only goes for 2 minutes, and you have 8 minutes of Q&A, and you could bomb the Q&A. I don't think that's happened, but it's very easy to take a very long-winded answer and continue to talk. Well, in that time, the judges or the mentors may want to ask more questions, or the investors want to ask more follow-up questions. And so I definitely want to encourage that and just know how to answer the question, and feel free to say, hey, would you like to know more? Or just stop and wait for the next question. It's okay for there to be silence. Don't be afraid of pauses. And so that might have happened a couple of times.
Sab, I'm going to pick up on your writing on Twitter, or writing in tweets, or speaking in tweets whenever you're giving a presentation. I'll even say write in tweets on the page as well. Just have done like a number of pitches. Sometimes less is more, definitely less is more when it comes to just like sheer text on the page. Like if you want me to take in that visual information, keep it concise, keep it brief, be visual where you can, and where you can't, like add in a good voiceover on there. I would encourage like each of people pitching today to try to think about how to bring interactivity into your presentation or into your pitch. it is super helpful when people are getting down to how the product works or how it would actually function. And I do know that it can actually change some minds in the room, even if there's something for people to play with, like a prototype or an application or something while they're sitting there. I wouldn't overlook showing interactivity where you can.
I'd like to add an initial thing I just realized is I think all the entrepreneurs that pitch today are probably extremely talented. But I don't know what their backgrounds are, their unfair advantage is, right? And I think when you have this 2-minute pitch, I usually will always tell any entrepreneur, you need to tell me what your unfair advantage is to show that you're going to win. But more importantly, what is that unique insight you have about this problem? So for all these pitches, I think when we got into the Q&A, it made sense. But at the onset, I had no idea what was the actual unique insight, right? So for example, with drop-in, it's awesome to hear that you've done this before and that you're 100% prior, but because of that, you now have this mixed model, right? In addition to that, I do think stating some of the unique insights, such as like, we are not zoned as an office, but as a professional space, right? If you can get that in the pitch somehow, I think it becomes far more compelling to know exactly why you're doing what you're doing that specific way. And I think when we got in Q&A, all the entrepreneurs stated it, but I think if you can just show that even beforehand, it's a far more compelling pitch, because I'm like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. And keeps me really engaged.
Awesome. All right, well, I think Wayne should be good to go, our final pitch of tonight. So I'm pretty excited for it. Let's give it another shot. And thank you, everyone that's on here right now, for bearing with us through that slight technical difficulty. But Saba, Don, Michael, that was really great feedback. And I agree with everything that you guys said. And yeah, let's see, Wayne, if we can give it another go here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Wayne, and I'm the CEO at CargoScout.com. Logistics can make and break a business. My startup is focused on cutting the time spent in coordinating shipments and helping logistic companies lower their costs. The problem is that it takes a logistic coordinator 90 minutes and 60 responses to deliver a shipping container. Employees often re-enter the same information up to 4 times. This costs them $78 per shipment. The entire West Coast ports, not including the rest of North America, moves 8.5 million containers a year, costing $663 million. Furthermore, because logistic companies deal with numerous shipments one at a time, it is very difficult to identify what loads can be combined to reduce the need for a second run. By doing data processing for our customers and our vendors, our B2B SaaS product reduces the time spent to 20 minutes and helps save $150 million across our coverage on the West Coast. This provides a single point of contact to process information and eliminates re-entry of data for all stakeholders. Furthermore, with the data, we help identify opportunities to optimize shipments that minimizes the need for a second run and lower CO2 emissions and maintenance costs. Our competitors are Flexport and Uber Freight. Both Flexport and Uber have developed their own exclusive technologies to compete with other logistic companies. I am the sole business founder. During my 3 years in logistics management, I have made numerous industry connections and successfully sold $40,000 in revenues within a single month at a former startup in Y Combinator. I'm working with 2 UI designers, 3 advisors, and a web developer. We are based in Vancouver, and we started 1 year ago. We make our money by charging per shipment. We have delivered 19 shipments and processed $10,500 in revenues from year to date. Plus, we have a letter of intent for an upcoming project with a multinational logistics company. Thank you for your interest. Kindly reach out to me to discuss opportunities to scale.
Nice. All right. Good job, Wayne. And while we wait for him to come into this room, I guess we can start to get some feedback.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I think I mentioned this too. the other panelists on here that have like a passion for the logistics space. So I think it's really, really cool to see at least a couple of concepts make it through. I think it's super important and a very good thing to talk about. I think this is just more of communicating the value prop. I think too often in logistics, the focus is on efficiency and cost savings, but you could actually speak to the value you're creating for someone in terms of how it impacts their sales or how it prevents stockouts or something that goes downstream of the value chain. Just because there's going to be a number of audiences that you're going to be pitching to or pitching a solution to, people who may not be doing the work day to day. You're kind of hitting different areas of the C-suite. So make sure that we're speaking in downstream language. I think that would be incredibly valuable to your pitch and also your value prop.
Wayne, you're muted.
Did Wayne give feedback or say something? I don't
Did Wayne give feedback I didn't realize my mic was muted. Yeah. Thank you very much, Michael. That was really appreciate that. It's very important to know how to optimize that besides just looking at improving efficiency, because at the end of the day, it depends like what kind of level of efficiency we want to know how much that matters to the bottom line in terms of the dollar value that can be gained from other suppliers. So that would be the freight forwarders or the trucking companies that are managing their costs in their operations. Yeah.
So I guess a point of feedback, I really liked the competitor slide, not because of you listing your competitors, but sort of the visual showing sort of how all these other logistics providers could leverage and use you. I saw that, but I didn't hear it. And I'd love to have you talk about how we are a network business, that, we provide Flexport-like software to all these other folks, right? Because I think truly not every one of these logistics companies could provide or even build that sort of software.
Yes, that is very true, because there's a lot of traditional logistics players in this marketplace, and they're getting a chunk of their business being taken away from some of the new entrants with better technology, and there's not that many technology providers that are able to come up and switch their kind of platform, the kind of technology that they're providing. So you have cumbersome software like SAP and internal records management systems that logistic company use, and that is the big problem is those systems are not interconnected to each other, whereas Flexport and Uber offer a connected platform, but they only use it exclusively for their own partners and their own customers, and they do that because they see that there is an advantage in a technology playing field. And what we want to do is to provide this technology to our partners and our customers and enable them to compete with the new technological entrants in this logistics industry.
Wayne, so I think you nailed the landing. It was pretty strong. I think all of us were kind of like nodding, going, cool. Right at the end, he's like crashed it. I think the slides were super busy during. There's just a lot going on that made it a bit of a mess. It doesn't matter too much, but I do think good design will kind of help though in that regard, because it speaks about your product. Like your product is about making something simpler, and so I'm kind of like, if this is messy, right? Like, and it might not be indicative at all. I had a question, and I don't know if you got it answered, and someone else also asked it. It looks like a bit of a red ocean, pun intended. How are you better than all the other competitors? Like, there's so many companies doing this, like, all over the world. You're a solo founder, got a couple of people working with you. Sometimes that's a bit of a yellow flag in terms of like, you're the only person with so much skin in the game, technically. So the question directly is, how are you better than everyone else? And then, do you think you're going to need other people on the team to help you create this and make this worldwide?
Yes. There are quite a lot of startups and a lot of new entrants in the supply chain logistics field, and that's absolutely the biggest differentiator is that I've worked in this industry before and had 3 years experience across logistics management as well as selling logistics services, which differentiates myself from a lot of other startups that only have probably the technological side, or they have a technology side, but a business founder that does not have as much experience in both, how these services are sold and how the operations are actually taking place inside a trucking and warehousing operations. Now, there are already a lot of established players in this industry that have a lot more experience, a lot more resources, but the other part with this industry is that you have like businesses of all kinds of sizes. You have trucking companies, warehousing providers that have, say, more than 500 trucks, or they're just between 50 to 100 trucks, and they have their own sweet spot in terms of operations. For us, we focus on import containers and only dry goods in import containers, and only on the West Coast major import hubs in North America to start. So that is Port of Vancouver, Port Los Angeles. Those are my most familiar territories, and I've stuck with them in my 3 years in this field. And that's our strategy of growing, is to build up a concentration of volume in that area and slowly scale it towards other partners, vendors, and customers across the North American space. Now, regarding the technological side, we haven't really built a back end. The way we do this is we built a front end when we do things that are manually. So we have wireframes and mock-ups, things that don't scale. We present them to our customers, and I've been doing this in the last 10, 12 months to identify what works across multiple different customers and users that I work with. And what we came up with is that many of the smaller, medium-sized firms that have, say, between less than 250 employees prefer a type of dashboard management method that can be visualized, that is focused on visualizing their operations, rather than a system that focuses on just the complexity of numbers and have a lot of complex forms or tasks that they have to use in order to manage their trucking warehousing operations. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, nice. Any other questions from our awesome panel? All set? All right, awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking around and viewing our first Party Pitchers Pitch event. Have a great rest of your night, and see you in September, where we will have 5 more amazing companies join us in the hut. Until then.